Thank you very much. And I'd like to add my own welcome to you all this morning and to Beyond the Brain 14. We're partnering, as you can see, with the Aleph Trust, who are going to be introducing themselves, Watkins Books, and the Academy for the Advancement of Post-Materialist Sciences. And we have the president, Marjorie Wollicott, who will be presenting later after Rupert Sheldrake. You can't hear me. And welcome also to all the Aleph students here. I think we've got about 40 students present this meeting and being supported by the SMN Trust. And we're very grateful for that support, which enables more students to attend. Just a little bit of background for those of you who don't know about the Beyond the Brain conferences. The name comes from Stan Grof's book, Beyond the Brain, and he's just published this year a 2-volume work, really summarizing all his work, which was reviewed by a colleague in the last issue of the journal. And so the idea was conceived in Chicago in 1994 with Willis Harman, who was then the president of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and Ed Mitchell. And that's the same year as the Journal of Consciousness Studies started, so that's now 25 years old. And then we had our first meeting in Cambridge in 1995, and a few people here were actually there, like Tuvi, I think, who's been to every single Beyond the Brain conference since. And that also partly came out of the Institute of Noetic Sciences causality project, which led to publications on new metaphysical foundations of modern science, and which we've been pursuing with our Galileo project, which I'll mention just in a moment. The cultural context of this conference is that neurosciences, philosophy, psychology, the whole academic world is dominated by a materialistic worldview. And in the case of neuroscience and psychology and philosophy, this means that the brain produces consciousness. That's the central dogma of neuroscience. And some of you may have read, there's a $20 million project being supported by the Templeton World Charity Foundation to find out how the brain produces consciousness. And this exactly, as you see, is what is questioned in the Beyond the Brain approach. And so humans are seen as biochemical machines without free will. We had a long discussion about this at dinner last night. There's a non-dual version of free will as well. And so it's bottom-up, outside-in, mechanistic, and it's half the story. It's the outside part of the story, rather than the inside part of the story. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to a new book by Jeff Kripal called The Flip. And I reviewed that in the last issue. He spoke brilliantly at the Interlaken meeting on consciousness in the summer. And he has a number of good phrases, including this one: our conclusions are really a function of our exclusions. So in other words, what we exclude will determine what we're going to conclude, because it's reflected in the limitation of your assumptions. And he also says that materialism rigorously leaves out everything it cannot explain. And the evidence that we're looking at in this conference is dismissed, and so it's missed. And so the significance is missed as well. And so half the story is missing. And this is the part of the story that we're aiming to provide in this conference series. Now, our approach is evidence-based spirituality. We're all for evidence, we're all for evidence-based, but a wider base of evidence than is normally looked at. And we're looking towards a post-materialist science, which is open to the transcendent, and following in the spirit of William James's radical empiricism and Sir Alister Hardy's explorations of spiritual experience. This phrase, medical materialism, was used in the varieties of religious experience by William James as famous Gifford lectures. And so what we're suggesting is that human beings, the model of the human being, that we do have a transcendent component of our identity. And this leads to an expanded ontology, epistemology, and methodology. And I just want to insert here some remarks on levels of identity. And this comes partly from my reading on Gnostic traditions, which is what I'm researching at the moment. And they used to distinguish between the hylics, the psychics, and the pneumatics. And of course, the meaning of psychic and pneumatic is very different from what we understand in our modern terms. So highly is the Greek for matter. Then at that level of identity, you identify yourself entirely with your body, your physical body. So this corresponds to physicalism. The level of the psyche, which is the baptism of water, and pistis, pistis is faith in Greek. And here you see yourselves as part of the whole. So this is already an expansion of identity, part of a larger whole. And in the pneuma level, the level of pneumatics, the pneuma was the breath, gnosis, or the baptism of light and fire. You know you are the whole. So this is the crucial shift to non-duality. Seeing yourselves as part of the whole to shifting to actually realizing you are the whole. And so this gnosis gives us access to deeper structures of reality. And this is a quote from April DeConnick's book, The Gnostic New Age. Our essential human self or spirit is nothing less than God's very own life essence waiting to be reawakened through gnosis. And so the game is forgetting and remembering, going to sleep and waking up, descending and ascending, going into density and darkness, and then moving back into light. And at this point, just like to highlight for you the Galileo Commission report, and there's the website, written by Professor Dr. Harold Wallach. We now have summaries of the argument in English, French, Dutch, Italian, and German. And if anybody here would like to offer a summary in another language, please see me, and we can arrange for that to be done. And part of the basis of this is the philosopher R.G. Collingwood, when he said the answer to any question presupposes the question, whatever the question presupposes. And because all science begins with a question, for the question is logically prior to its own answer, all science begins with presupposition. This is a fundamental realization where philosophy undergirds, and the logic and reason, they undergird science. So presuppositions are inescapable. And you can see how this works in terms of the Galileo report. And here we have two versions of this. We have a summary report. You can buy these downstairs, a small summary report. And we also have the full report, which has been updated, and a special price for this for only £10. So those of you who are up for the nitty-gritty, do look at the full report. And what I'd like to encourage you to do, if you haven't already done this, is to go to GalileoCommission.org and either sign up as a friend, or if you're an academic or someone with an academic background, then do support the initiative by signing up as a professional affiliate. Because what we're trying to do in this phase of the Galileo Commission is to build the community of evidence-based spirituality and post-materialist science, and we need your support. So we need you to read the report, to promote the report, to put it on your own webpage, to put a link in, because it's only by spreading the word that people will be encouraged to come out, because there are an awful lot of scientists and academics who don't dare talk about spiritual experiences because they think their colleagues are going to ridicule them and think they've lost all their credibility. And the irony is that a large number of these people are afraid of their own colleagues who themselves have had spiritual experiences. And so this is a huge taboo, and it's part of our function here in the network is to break out of this taboo and encourage other people and to come to the realization that spiritual and mystical and psychic experiences are normal. They are had by over 2/3 of the population. And so we're held in an iron grip of materialism at the moment and fear, where people fear talking about the important things in their lives. And we provide a space in the network to do exactly that. And that's why you're here. And I hope that you will enjoy the exchanges with people who are here. So this is my last slide. Just to say that, point out that the theory that the brain produces consciousness is just such a presupposition, which is incorporated in the hard problem. The hard problem says, how does the brain produce consciousness? And this is what we're trying to open up here, and you'll hear more from the speakers. And promissory materialism, which means we haven't cracked it yet, but we will find a materialistic, physicalist understanding of consciousness. That dates back to the first person who said that we're going to crack it, was a German physiologist in 1842. So it's been going on since 1842, and we still haven't cracked it, and we still don't know. And if people criticize the filter theory for saying, well, we don't know how that works, then we don't know how the physicalist theory works either. And so this materialism presumes what it's trying to establish. It presumes that there's going to be a materialistic explanation, which obviously there is for all the neural correlates, but correlation is not causation. And then finally, to put the matter, this is Alfred Russel Wallace, who is the co-founder of natural selection with Darwin. To put the matter in a simple form, the asserted fact, and he covered a lot of them, is either possible or not possible. If possible, such evidence as we've been considering would prove it. If not possible, such evidence could not exist. And this is really what we need to do. We need to tell people there are no impossible facts. So if something impossible happens, then it's your theory that needs to be changed, not the experience, not the fact. And so if mind is not in the radio, the impossible, this is Jeff Kripal, becomes possible, indeed predictable. And that's what the University of Virginia Irreducible Mind Beyond Physicalism project is about. However, sometimes it's not as simple as that, as John Kenneth Galbraith pointed out, when he said, faced with the choice between changing one's mind and proving there is no need to do so, almost everyone gets busy on the proof. We mustn't allow that to happen. Thank you.